Thanks for joining us for Season 4 of the Hospitality Hangout, a hospitality-focused podcast where the founders at Branded Strategic share their insights and bring technology and innovation leaders that are making things happen in the industry we love. My name is Jimmy Frischling, otherwise known as the Finance Guy. I'd like to introduce my partner, Mr. Michael Schatzberg, also known as the Restaurant Guy.
Thanks for that fantastic, kind intro, Jimmy. And to all those listening, feel free to call me Shatsy. Together, we're the personalities behind the Branded Strategic Hospitality Group team and all things everything. We work at the intersection of hospitality, technology, innovation, and capital. Jimmy, before we get started, let me just do a plug real quick for something we've been working on, and it's launched and it's live, and I think everyone's loving it so far. It's the Branded Marketplace. Jimmy, the Branded Marketplace is a platform that you can go to. It's free for any operator, for anybody in the restaurant hospitality space. You go to and you find the best in-class solutions that are solving every operator's problems today. And there are so many, and there are so many great companies on the marketplace. I encourage everyone listening to check it out. It's thebrandedmarketplace.com. If you're selling something or you want to find a great channel to sell it through, you got to email us at marketplace@brandedstrategic.com and get on this platform. Jimmy, have you been on it? Have you checked it out?
I have been on it, and I have to say, from a self-promotional standpoint, Shatsy, you're doing an outstanding job. Outstanding job.
Do you like the colors? Do you love everything about it?
I love everything about it, and I love the community that we're building with the marketplace.
What do you love most? Tell me one thing you love most.
One thing I love most. I love that we already have almost 200 technology companies that are all operator centric right now, visible, and ready and willing to connect with operators who wish to leverage tech to improve their stores. I love the operator centric nature of the entire community.
I only asked you for one thing, Jimmy. Just one. I only asked you one thing you like.
I don't just do one thing. But anyway, are you
yes.
good? Are you good? We got a guess.
I'm good. So check out thebrandedmarketplace.com, everybody.
There you go. Well done, Shatsy. Well done. Listen, we're very excited today for the episode and our special guest, Micha Magid, co-founder, co-CEO, Mighty Quinn's Barbeque, and a very good friend of ours. I'd also like to say, and we're going to get more into this later, but on a very personal level, my father's favorite New York City barbecue joint. More to come on that later, though.
What's his favorite? What's his favorite thing?
His favorite, we're going ribs, baby. He just likes the big ribs.
Loves the ribs. I love the ribs too.
And the mac and cheese, but he loves the ribs.
Yeah, the mac and cheese is so gooey and delicious.
We're going to talk.
Let's get into it. Yeah,
we're going to talk about that. But first, Micha, let us have you please take the lead. Give us a quick intro on yourself, your background, and also an introduction to Mighty Quinn's restaurants. Very excited and appreciate you being on the show with us.
Guys, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate the invitation. So yeah, I'm the co-founder and co-CEO of Mighty Quinn's. We are a fast casual restaurant group serving authentic slow smoke barbecue, mainly in New York and New Jersey. But as we'll probably talk about later, we'll be expanding into some new markets with our team of amazing franchisees. Personally, I started off in the investment banking world doing M&A for JP Morgan before moving on to the hedge fund world.
Oh, see, that's why Jimmy likes you so much. I knew Jimmy. I knew there was something why we had this guy on. It's not about the Mighty Quinns.
It is about Mighty Quinns.
Guy.
He is a recovering Wall Streeter just like myself, taking all the skills and all the things we learned and applying it in the industry we now both love.
It all comes back to finance.
Is that the whole intro? That's it? So now, I got to get back into it. So from financial analyst, I mean, we spoke a little bit before, Micha. I mean, you also had a product that we loved in the restaurants, Bulldog Gin. So, I mean, you've been a finance guy, but you've touched in hospitality. So it's somehow in your blood. Give us a little bit more about your professional journey, how you finance guy, you're a gin guy, and now you're a barbecue guy.
Yeah, it's not the typical path. So, when I was doing M&A at JP Morgan, I was a generalist. So we looked at all industries. And then in my hedge fund days, I was also a generalist. We invested across the capital structure and a diversity of industries. I always had an affinity for the consumer side of things because you can just look at it through, a consumer lens. You yourself are the customer, which is a little different than like a B2B company where you're probably not the buyer or the customer. So just having an affinity for consumer brands. Yeah, Bulldog was something that actually a former JP Morgan guy started. He grew that from, effectively 0 to 150,000 cases before selling that business off to Campari. So a really great outcome. Fast forward a few years later, Mighty Quinn's is actually founded by, three of us, myself, two partners, Hugh Mangum and Christos Gormos. Hugh was smoking barbecue out in Brooklyn at these weekend foodie markets. And, the lines were instantaneous. And, we really saw something special happening there.
Was it Mighty Quinn's at that point, or was it a different name?
No, it actually was. The name that we use today is the name that we had at the markets. So
any background? Who's Mighty Quinn?
Yeah, so Quinn is actually Hugh's eldest son. So it was named after Quinn when we started. And when we opened up our first brick and mortar, we had a little bit of a buzz going on in the New York market. So we kept the name.
Got it. You like how I added that question, Jimmy? That was a good question, right?
Shatz, I got to tell you, that may have been the best question you've ever asked. The best, Jerry, the best. Listen, to kick some things off, because I really feel the podcast starts when I start speaking. We are so excited.
You don't usually stop speaking, Jimmy.
Well, there you go. Well, we were so excited that Mighty Quinn's made fast casuals top movers and shakers list. And while I fully admit I may be biased, I want our audience, our listeners to know in our industry, this is an incredibly well-lauded recognition, and we want to congratulate you for receiving such honors. I think something in particular that sets Mighty Quinn's apart from the competition is the quality of your meats and your products. And you already started to jump into that with the smoking of the meats and whatnot. For our guests, can you share the secrets, or maybe at least share some information about, your product sourcing? We know guests today more than ever actually care about, not just what they're eating, but where it came from. So maybe you can talk a little about product sourcing as well as your secret sauce. Pun was absolutely intended. Aracha.
Well played.
Sure. Well, yeah, I think being transparent into, where the food is coming from and using clean ingredients is definitely a trend that's very relevant for today and will probably be more so for tomorrow. We're fortunate in that we do a lot of volume and few cuts of meat. So, we're able to kind of go to the farms directly and make sure that, our supply sources are there. They know that they're getting very predictable volume for us. So that's enabled us to scale and do it consistently. I think, when you talk about any brand, let alone proteins, having consistency through that growth period is super important. And I think, the relationships with our vendors have allowed us to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. Switching gears a little bit. I mean, look, we love your food. I mean, I'm fortunate I live on the Upper East Side, so I don't know which number store that is, but I think it was one of your maybe second or third store. So I love it. We get it all the time. The kids love it. We pick up, we order in. It's just great. Just switching now a little bit to technology. I mean, in our restaurants, I consider myself an early adopter to a lot of tech, simply because maybe we got some high profile places. People come to New York to sell tech because there's so many restaurants. Myself in tech, I mean, you are really on top of the tech. You are always looking for the newest, greatest thing. You're testing things, which is one of the reasons that we love you so much, because you really have a lot of the same kind of ideas that we have in our restaurant side. When you talk about technology and Mighty Quinn's, what kind of stuff are you using? What are you seeing? What's making it happen? Give us a little of what you've put in, what you're looking at to do. Give us more about the technology, because you're incredible at that. You're really connecting technology and hospitality, which is what Jimmy and I love.
No, I appreciate that. So yeah, back in 2016, we really saw this delivery and takeout trend taking off. So we knew we had to kind of be ahead of the curve. We didn't have a huge, balance sheet to go do things from scratch. So, we did have an app and a web, mobile ordering system, but they didn't talk to each other. They both kind of did what they needed to do. But as we moved, through the pandemic, we realized we needed more of a seamless platform, one system that was, accessible both via app, web, mobile, catering, that customers can use, basically a turnkey solution for ordering. So we switched over to a new platform, just really a few months ago to enable a more seamless guest experience, and I think it's been really good. We've seen our downloads have increased. The utilization of our own native digital platforms have been increasing, which I think is like what every restaurateur in 2021 is seeking. So we're happy to accommodate that, but also keep in mind, like, these systems live side by side with third-party delivery. So it's not that we see just like a native-only world for our brand, but we think having that solution for our guests to utilize outside of the third-party world is super important.
I got to just say, I just saw an article, and I think I shared it with you, Jimmy. I just saw an article today. DoorDash did a study, And they said that people prefer to order directly from the restaurant than even using DoorDash. It's incredible. And that's a study came out by DoorDash. If I didn't share it with you, I will, but it's incredible to Misha's point. I mean, people really want to go right to the restaurant they love and order directly. Interesting.
Well, I think that that's consistent with one of our themes that in every industry I've worked, content ultimately, I think, comes out on top. Content wins. That's what the consumer, especially in a B2C business, consumers want that content that they're seeking for, and intermediaries can play a role, and they can play an incredibly important role. But at the end of the day, that's what they want. And I think the pandemic, did shed a light on just how expensive and the relationship venues have with the delivery service platforms, particularly because of the commissions that get charged. So there's no bashing on the DSPs, the delivery service platforms here, but to Misha's point, the criticality around getting people to order direct and embrace the brand cannot be overstated. So I appreciate that Misha said that Schatz, you highlighted it, and that my new BFF at DoorDash is highlighting it as well. That's pretty cool. I want to get back, we just got back, I should say, from our first trade show since
we had a blast, Jimmy, didn't we?
In a post-pandemic, it was, and actually it was. I think the first conference was really I don't want to say well timed as much as the topic. The big buzz now is ghost kitchens, and this was the ghost kitchen conference. The ghost kitchen can be referred to as a dark kitchen, a virtual kitchen, virtual restaurant. There's lots of different nomenclatures around it, but it was great to be back on the road. We had a really good time. We
catching up with cocktail party we threw with the first night, Jimmy. I mean, we had 100 people there.
Yep, old friends, new friends. It was all good.
It was a hug fest.
It was a hug fest. But I think the whole idea of the virtual kitchen concept being the first event back was fitting in part on how our industry has shifted. So Misha, Mighty Quinn's entered this space, we know, particularly in a partnership with our friends over at Otto's Taco. Otto's a good friend of Brandon's. We are always a big fan of his brick and mortar stores. Schatzy's boys, if it wasn't Mighty Quinn's Barbecue, it was Otto's Taco.
Otto's Tacos.
Yep. And we're personally very excited that Otto's, which did, as a result of the pandemic, close down all their physical locations. But we love that they connected with you and started operating a virtual delivery-only restaurant out of Mighty Quinn's. Can you share maybe how that partnership came about, and also the experience in turning one of your own kitchens into a shared space and actually really driving a virtual restaurant, and that being Otto's Taco?
Yeah, sure. So first off, both Otto and myself are from California, so we have a passion for street tacos. Let me just start with that. So Otto actually opened up his flagship location just a few blocks away from our flagship location in the East Village. So we have known those guys for, coming up on a decade. And when they weren't able to reopen their network of stores, we saw an opportunity to really utilize the kitchen space in our operation and relaunch them as a delivery-only brand. Similar to Mighty Quinn's, Otto's does a few things, but does them very well, and that was right up our alley. Without having to add a bunch of new ingredients or cooking process to our kitchen, it kind of clicked right in. Obviously, a non-competitive category, but obviously protein centric as well, just being Mexican food. So really, everything aligned with what we were looking for in terms of bringing on a new digital brand, and we have the first location up and running on the Upper East Side. And so far we've been really happy.
That's awesome. We love Otto. We love what you guys are doing, and it's incredible that, again, not only do you have incredible insight into being an early adopter to technology, but I think having the insight of this whole running multiple brands out of a brick and mortar, it's just another sales channel. So bringing having Otto's coming out of your Mighty Quinn's brick and mortar, it's great. And to Jimmy's point, when we went down to that ghost kitchen conference, you're there and you see the folks there, and you're really in the early stages of this virtual cloud kitchen, whatever you want to call it. It's really incredible. So I think it's going to be a fun ride to see how people embrace this and how folks like yourself really put brands into your brick and mortar. Let's touch base a little bit about some of the other things you're doing. Not just are you doing Otto's Tacos, another virtual brand, but you're also doing a lot of online. You're selling a lot of product through a good friend of ours and Branded's Goldbelly, which is just a fantastic platform, which again, he's just lit it up during this pandemic. Joe Ariel's a good friend. We've known him for years. So tell us a little about what you're doing over there at Goldbelly and what kind of products you're selling and just getting that name across the country. So now you said that you're really kind of New York, New Jersey centric, but yet I can be anywhere in the country. And what can I get and how fast? And
yeah, so Goldbelly's been great. We've been on the platform for a while. I think we've always been, a top 5, if not a top 3 vendor on the barbecue side. So we are basically shipping, via 1 or 2 day air, frozen barbecue. It's all fully smoked and ready to go. Everything gets rethermed at home. And, obviously through the pandemic, we saw this business, go up by probably a multiple of 3. And we were in the unique position because we have this fairly large, central commissary operation where if we need to ship out, for example, 300, 8-pound briskets in a week, like we have the capacity to do that. And, it's run by a very talented team on the executive chef side. So, Goldbelly really played into the trends that we saw last year. People, not only experiencing more of their meals through like outside the restaurant, but also in their own homes through mail order. We never would have thought this would have become such a big business, but I think, COVID probably pulled forward, 3 to 5 years of demand, and we kind of found ourselves in a much higher demand situation for mail order barbecue.
Yeah, I love their thesis of, kind of curating the best of, and I think it's a great win, not just for Goldbelly, but clearly for Mighty Quinn's to be recognized throughout the country as providing the best in class. I want to shift gears a little bit, and this might surprise some of our listeners, but I want to talk about SOAP. And no, that's not an acronym for something, secretive or spectacular. I'm talking about SOAP. When you think of barbecue, most people may not first think about SOAP, although maybe they should, especially if it's really good and saucy barbecue. But Micha, can you share with us an aha moment that inspired you to repurpose fat from your meat into rustic bars of soap? How is it made? And more importantly, where can people buy it?
What does it smell like? What does it smell like?
What does it smell like? Unless we're about to tell people like we're having an Oprah moment and look under your chair and you get a bar of soap, listener, and you get a bar of soap. No, seriously, I don't even think most people even know what you're doing in the product you've created. But so please enlighten us on the Mighty Quinn's transition into soap.
Yeah, sure. So, our whole organization is very mindful about trying to be as sustainable as possible, and really limiting our impact on the environment. As part of, having brisket being such a high percentage of our sales, we butcher a lot of meat. And, a byproduct of that is, this organic beef fat that was really going straight into the garbage. And we were spending a lot of time trying to figure out how to repurpose this material. And, one of the things that we came across was beef tallow, which is really just you take that fat, you render it down to tallow. And we were, one of the oldest uses of natural beef tallow is to make soap. And so our soap is pretty simple. It's got really 4 ingredients. It's tallow, lye, peppermint oil, and organic coconut charcoal. So it smells like peppermint.
It doesn't smell like pork belly.
No, it does not smell like pork belly. If you want,
that's good, because I don't know if people really want to do that.
No, if you want the pork belly scent, you just got to order some pork belly and dab behind the ears.
Okay, that's what Jimmy likes to do. He puts barbecue sauce as cologne.
Yeah. So the soap has been great. It's available on our website, and it's really.
Can you get that on Goldbelly also?
No, we haven't put it on Goldbelly. It's actually not a bad idea, but for now, it's just on our website.
No charge for that one there.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right, well, that's fantastic. I got to get some of that soap, and we'll talk about that at the end of the show because there's going to be a special offer, Jimmy, and I don't want to blow it yet. But let's talk a little bit about, because there's so much. I got to tell you, you're soap, you're selling stuff on Goldbelly, you're a technology guy, you got gin, you're a finance guy. There's so much going on here. Mighty Quinn's, you got Otto's Tacos, Ghost Kitchens. I don't know. You got your hands in a lot of pots there. Let's talk a little bit about you're doing a lot of stuff with expanding into stadiums, which I think, the whole experience of stadiums today, it's not just going to watch the team. You got to have great food. You got to have great, booze and beer and cocktails. You got to have great seats. You got to have great screens. You got to have everything's got to be great. So you're in Yankee Stadium, big Yankee fan here. You're at the Garden, right? I think probably 2 of the most iconic stadiums in the world is Madison Square Garden, Yankee Stadium.
We just lost all our Boston listeners on that one comment alone. All folks in Boston just literally turned off.
I didn't say that the Yankees are the best team. I didn't. I mean, they are. Who has more world champions? But let's not get into that. I mean, look. Let's just. I hope that's not true, Jimmy. I love everybody, and I hope everybody continues to listen. But let's just talk a bit of how are things going at your stadiums. I mean, let's not talk about the pandemic. I know things are, but just in general, how are things going in Yankee Stadium, Madison Square Garden? Are you bringing it to other stadiums? And just a little bit about that experience.
Yeah. So, when they approached us, my partners and I were nervous. Like, how do you ensure that the food is going to be the same? This is before our franchise initiative. How do we ensure that the Mighty Quinn's experience will be the same as our restaurants when we're not, that the team working those restaurants are not our employees, right? So, we were very happy to see that the people and who work in the stadium locations, they're really career restaurant employees. They've been there for years. It's a substantially lower turnover versus, our industry in brick and mortar. So once we've trained these teams up, I mean, they really attack it with a passion. They're back season after season. So, the retraining dilemma is no longer an issue. And, obviously we've limited the menu for stadium food. But I think, to your point, yeah, hot dogs and chicken fingers doesn't cut it anymore. Like, people are going to these games, to these events. They want like a real experience, and food is such an integral part of that. We were super excited to bring barbecue to that equation. And what's
the best selling items that you have? I know it's a limited menu, but what's the kind of stuff that sells the best?
Yeah, so probably burnt ends and dirty fries, which is our which is fries covered with shredded burnt ends, our spicy wing sauce, some cilantro, some red onion.
That sounds good. Wash that down with a nice beer. Sounds good.
Oh yeah, and then at the Garden we do our version of the McRib, and that's spelled MQ, not MC. RIB.
Aha! You see what he did there, Jimmy?
I see what he did.
Yes. So that's done with all natural baby back ribs, deboned, black cherry barbecue sauce made in house. It's insane. So we bring something a little special to the stadium locations, and we're obviously super stoked that games are back, especially at outdoor venues.
That is awesome.
More things at Yankee Stadium now. Have you seen like the numbers? I mean, because now the capacity is like 100%. Are things like rocking and rolling over there?
Yeah, they're cranking. I mean, they do a phenomenal job of just cranking volume, and it really lasts throughout the whole game. So it's really fun to see in action.
So the food's better than the record, huh?
No comment.
Okay.
And Shatsy wins our Boston friends back. All right.
Let's go.
Let's talk about expansion and franchising. Currently, Mighty Quinn's, as we just talked about, has locations just in New York and New Jersey. But maybe you can tell us, what's next? Where are you headed? And how can guests request locations in their towns?
Sure. Well, we have a very simple, guest submission form on our website, so people are welcome to go check out mightyquinnsbbq.com and email us, any questions or comments. But in terms of like franchise locations, yeah, we're going to be opening up some new restaurants, both in our Northeast territory, but also moving down the coast. We haven't fully announced details yet, but Tampa Bay, Florida, Maryland, potentially some West Coast operations. That's all in the pipeline for us, so we're pretty excited.
I love when we have big announcements like this, Jimmy. Look at that. We just got another little golden nugget of information.
Yep, CNBC has nothing on us. We're the ones breaking news. We're breaking
news, man. We break news here, man. This is huge. Well, listen, that's exciting stuff. So, I mean, Florida sounds great. As a fellow operator, I think if we made a list of things that are pain points in the restaurant space, I think we'd probably come up with a very similar list. Can you give us a little bit about what are the kind of things right now keeping you up at night regarding Mighty Quinn's? Like, give us a few of the things that are really keeping you up at night.
Yeah, I think it's really the broad trends you read about in the paper. Staffing challenges is pretty material right now, and probably what's played into that is just resource shortages. So we're seeing a lot of cost inflation. But I personally think like a lot of this is transitory, and if we group probably end of this year, a lot of those are going to be kind of in the rearview mirror. So fortunately, it's really short-term pain. And I think, the overwhelming benefit is going to be just emerging out of this pandemic and getting back to, business as usual, with above trend growth. That's more exciting than kind of, the short-term pain of dealing with some of these other challenges.
I think that's great. Before we close out, this section and move on to the next, I just want to talk just a little more about the digital transformation that's happening in our industry. We had a good laugh recently with another guest on the Hangout that shared that operators did not get into the restaurant business to be in the data management business or it becoming diligence experts in all things tech. And I think the same can be same rings true when it comes to the hands-on and people-facing and the operators as they're learning to navigate in this new digital world. Maybe specifically, what advice do you have for operators that are interested in going digital?
Sure. The restaurant tech stack is a little unique. Like, imagine if you had to buy like your steering wheel and your engine from two different companies and then put it together yourself into a car, right? That's kind of the way the tech stack is currently built in restaurants. And obviously that's going to change because it's a very inefficient system. So, I would say my advice would be before you implement anything, obviously the providers always give a very rosy view of what the experience is going to be like with their product. I always encourage people to talk to end users who are already using these systems. Because you get a lot of good information. And oftentimes these tech solutions are not super expensive, but they do take a lot of time. And, before you dedicate the resources to get things onboarded, I would just recommend that you fully explore other people's opinions of some of these various services.
I know we're going to jump into this next section, but that comment you made about the steering wheel and the engine, we hear from the largest restaurant
definitely
groups.
stealing that, by the way. I can see him using it next week.
And I will give attribution to our friend Micha.
No, you will not.
Well, probably not. But whether you're the biggest restaurant group or the smallest, the word we keep hearing about is bundled. We are a very fragmented industry, and we're also, our tech stack, as you just highlighted, is incredibly fragmented, and it's very frustrating to operators. And I think that's something we're seeing quickly changing, not just the new initiatives, but how companies are coming together to offer a more seamless solution. So I think there's a lot more to come in that perspective. I want to move on to what we call our talking back section of the podcast. While Schatz and I launched this because we like talking to folks and asking them questions and sharing their views with our listeners, we learned along the way that some of our guests, they had some questions for us. So with that in mind, Micha, it's time for talking back, and we invite you and give you the chance to ask us anything you like, and nothing is off the table. Micha, the microphone's yours.
It's a family show. Just remind him it's a family show.
All right,
family show.
I'm going to keep this PG then, I guess.
Okay.
Look, I think we talk about tech a lot, and we talk about things that are so far away from what used to be discussed around food. Like at the end of the day, we make great food, right? So what was the most memorable restaurant experience you had, call it, in the last 5 years where you spent less than $50?
Ooh. That's a fantastic question. Schatz, do you want to go first? Do you want me to take it?
Yeah, I got to think about this, Jimmy. I mean, holy moly, that's a good question. Yeah,
all right,
you go first.
I'm jumping in. I will say what comes to the top of my mind since you asked a direct question. I went down to Chinatown and went over to the Golden Unicorn and had a dim sum experience. It's not something I do very often, nothing I've done very often, and I have to say that a friend and I went down, and the carts are flowing by, and everything was so fresh. I mean, some of the things being cooked on the carts. It felt like a really eclectic and very diverse customer base, and also felt like it had connected with the local community. It felt like a neighborhood joint, and we were welcomed, and they were hospitable. And I got to tell you, I was tasting things and trying things I hadn't had ever. And really, I felt it was very authentic, at least by my standards or lack of experience in that domain, but really had a great time for under the price point of which you said.
Yeah, no, that's a great one, Jimmy. 5 years, I was thinking Nathan's Franks and those fries that I was in Coney Island, obviously it was like not last year, but the year before, because I guess we were just with the Nathan's guys. So I was reminding myself how delicious the fries and the Frank was. But then I was also thinking, I was in Mexico City a couple of years back, and just the street tacos there, it was just unbelievable. And let me tell you, it was way under $50. I think the beers were a quarter.
This last segment was sponsored by Nathan's Famous. And Schatz, you were asked for one experience and you gave two. So don't always make fun of me for being the guy that talks too much. But I respect your answer. Street tacos was the second, and our friend at Nathan's, who we do dig, and they do have the best Frank. Excellent, Micha. Excellent question. Schatzy, you are up, my friend.
I'm going to go right to the top of the tech stack. We touched a little bit about this, Micha. But if you had to give any advice to an operator, I know that we're going to check before we, introduce any new technology. You recommend, speaking to a few operators who are using the tech, and that's great advice. But let's just talk a little bit about if there's any tech that you could recommend to an operator right now. Like, what would the most important piece of technology be outside of, let's say, obviously the point of sale system? What would be the next most important piece of technology an operator has to have right now in their tech stack to, be successful? What is it, from your opinion?
All right, I'm going to have to give two answers on this one. So
you're allowed.
I will permit two.
All right, two. Okay, so the first is a little contrary to your setup. Sometimes the best decisions are the ones that you turn down, right? So for new restaurants that are opening that are still looking at server-based POS systems, that just makes my stomach churn. I see these quotes for single restaurant locations, $30,000, $40,000, which is just completely absurd and so 1990s, right? So I would first encourage everyone to use a cloud-based POS. They are, a tenth, if not lower, than those prices that I just mentioned, and they work a hell of a lot better. So that's number one. Number two, I think having the right data filter on your tech stack is important. You got to know who you're selling to and what you're selling. So utilizing the third-party data integrations, companies like Chowly, which basically connect third-party data to your POS, so you have transparency into that check. This way, you can actually run your reports. Your day part sales. Where your revenue channels are going and what's selling on those channels. I think having that data is super important.
I love it. I would have to agree with you on the cloud-based POS. I agree, and I think the data and things like that are, those are great ones. Appreciate that.
Well done, Shatsy, because I know Micha was now he'll sleep better at night knowing that you agreed with him. That's the key thing there, buddy.
Are you shaming me right now? Because I'm feeling a little shamed right now, and I don't appreciate it.
I'm not sure I was shaming you. I could have been bullying you. That could have been bullying. I'm not sure. Okay. I could have been gaslighting. We're going through Shatsy's favorite new vocabulary.
Just learn that word. I don't know what it means, but I love it.
All right. It's time for our crystal ball moment, a chance where we ask our guests to put on their Kreskin or Miss Cleo hat and predict the future. So how do you see restaurants and dining 2 years from now in relation to hospitality and technology?
Ooh, I like this question a lot. This is the best one.
It was I came up with the segment.
All right. So let me preface this one. You guys remember when Netflix was sending DVDs to your house, right? So
I still have one I haven't sent back yet, by the way.
So they were basically in the distribution business at that time, right? And who would have guessed, 20 years later, these guys are back in Scorsese movies, right? Really transformational. Okay, so now they're in distribution and content.
Yep.
So if you look at third-party delivery world, they're also in the distribution business. But I think in 2 years, they're also going to get into the content business.
Oh, so they're getting into it already, aren't they?
Right, exactly. So it's not Scorsese films, but name brand chefs, large corporate restaurant brands, I think will all start becoming in-house under those roofs. And so when you think about that, there's this huge disintermediation risk for restaurants as we travel into the future. I think you need to be strategic about how you position and differentiate what you're doing. So, for example, for Mighty Quinn's, we smoke briskets for 20 hours. Our category has a nice moat around it. I think we do a killer job on replicating that process at scale. But when you think about maybe pizzas or burgers, these are definitely at-risk categories. So I think as we look at how market share shifts over the next 2 years, those third-party guys are going to grow in terms of the actual kitchen work, which implies everything else is either going to be flat or maybe even shrinking relative to the overall pie that's growing. So I think that's going to be a big trend. Basically, the third-party guys are the Netflix of today. They're going to get into the content, aka the food business, out of their own kitchens.
Micha, as a fellow operator, I welcome anyone to come into our business. It's a great business. I welcome anyone to come in and create great food and great experiences. No easy task, but I welcome it.
All right.
So I say, bring it on. Let's jump in. But I think you're spot on, and I see we see it happening already. The third party platforms are creating their own brands already, and it's going to be interesting next couple of years. So you're spot on with that. And Jimmy and I are big fans of content wins. And, you've got a great brand and great content. So I think that you will be definitely on top and a winner. Let's jump into quick fire. This really is the best segment of the podcast. I've gotten numerous calls, emails. A lot of people just are always writing me letters about how much they like this segment. I'm going to ask you 5 lightning round questions. Don't think too hard, and just first answer comes to mind. Are you ready?
I'm ready now.
Nice.
Are you ready now?
I'm ready.
If you were to be a professional athlete, what would be your sport?
Tennis. Just a man in his racket.
Where are you getting dinner from tonight?
Match 65. Huge burger.
Love that place, by the way.
Yeah, huge.
Love that. Jimmy, that's up by us.
Great burgers.
What's your favorite food city in the world?
I don't have a favorite of anything, so I'm going to give you 3. New York City, Tokyo, and my hometown of LA.
Awesome. When travel resumes to complete normalcy, what's the first place you want to go and visit?
I'm going to say the Amalfi Coast.
Oh,
Ding, ding, ding.
now you got Jimmy all choked up there. That's Jimmy's place. If you were to challenge Jimmy or I to a game of pin the tail on the donkey, who would you have better odds of beating?
All right, I haven't seen you guys play this game, so I have no data here to go off of. I'm going to think I could beat Shatsy.
A pin the tail on the donkey, Jimmy? I can't. I mean, come on, that's my game.
I thought our producer lowered the threshold to really give you a fighting chance, but when in doubt, the answer "I could beat Shatsy" usually comes up. I think it's good. I respect it.
Every birthday party when I was young, spin you around, and I'd kill. I'd put the tail on every. I love pin the tail. We got to bring that game back.
Yeah, we'll bring it back. It's a bar game that's been destined. It's really, there's billiards, there's darts, there's shuffleboards, and I know people have been craving for pin the tail on the donkey.
Hey, Jimmy, you get a couple beers, you go a little. Come on, you bring a little pin the tail on donkey, any bar, you're gonna have a lot.
I
of
like
laughs.
it, and most importantly, I think that brings my record to like 38-2 of not being selected.
It's good for me. Thanks, Misha. I appreciate that. All I did was build you up, and this is what you do.
Listen, Misha, we wanted to thank you so much for joining us on the podcast and for sharing your great insights. We appreciate your hard work supporting the industry, not just during this most challenging time, but always. If you want to get in touch with Misha directly, you'll email the branded team at podcast@brandedstrategic.com.
But doesn't Misha live in New York City? Why don't we just give his address? People can go visit him.
Yeah, well, we find that giving out home addresses and cell phone numbers is frowned upon in this establishment. So you can email Branded at podcast@brandedstrategic.com, and we'd be happy to make the introduction. I teased at the top of the show, and I mentioned my dad, and I'm going to bring him back in just for a moment. I said that Mighty Quinn is my dad's favorite barbecue joint, but my dad had an experience where it was like the movie No Country for Old Men, where he was trying to call and he wanted to order food. My dad's an analog guy in a digital age, and you guys are technologically advanced, and he's like, I need a hot phone. I need a bat phone directly so I can order food. And I told him, you're on the podcast with us. My dad's like, can you get me Misha's number so I can call him when I want food? And Misha,
give out Misha's number.
Right. I told my dad, tell you what, you call me, I'll place the order on their website, and I'll take care of you. But I did want to bring up that my dad wanted your number because he loves your food. He wants to order direct. I told him I'd take care of it. But a shout out to your store
could Jimmy's dad call you direct anytime he wants to order? That would be awesome.
I don't think that's in our tech stack capabilities.
Yeah, there you go. Good answer. Answer.
Just before you get to the end of this, wrap it up, I did want to, we said we'd have a special offer, Jimmy, and Misha was kind enough to offer a free bar of soap made with whatever he's making it out of from leftover something or others. And so a free bar of soap to all listeners today. All we need is just ping us at podcast@brandedstrategic, give us your address, and Misha will ship out a free bar of soap. So that's pretty awesome.
And Misha will give you Shatsy's personal credit card to pay for all those bars of soap.
Perfect. Thank you.
We'll take care of that. To our listeners,
free hat?
No free stuff, man. No free junk. No free stuff. Not today. To our listeners, we want to thank you so much for taking the time to tune in. We know there are literally hundreds of thousands of podcasts out there, and we appreciate that you choose to hang out with us. I'm very excited to announce, and it kind of goes really great together. We had Misha and his fantastic barbecue joint, and next time on the podcast, we're going to welcome our good friend, Mr. Josh Goodman, founder and CEO of Innovative Tap Solutions. does business as the infamous Pour My Beer. Josh and his Pour My Beer team are leading the self-pour revolution, and I think it's going to be a really good time. And I'll also highlight
like it might get dirty, Jimmy.
It could go that way, but Josh is a great guy, and we're excited to have him. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss out on any of the exciting guests we'll have coming up in the future. And better yet, please invite a friend to hang out with us the next time.
Jimmy, I just got your note about telling your dad's story. Sorry about that, but look, we got both things in there. We got the free soap and your dad's story.
I appreciate you sharing that with our listeners. Thanks for that. That's all good. Listen, Micha, thank you so much for joining us. Can't wait till we're out eating in person. Again, we appreciate what you do. So this is Jimmy Frischling, your finance guy, signing off and passing it to Schatzy.
This is the restaurant guy, a.k.a. Schatzy, for Hospitality Hangout. Micha, this was awesome. If you haven't checked out Mighty Quinn's Barbecue, get over there because let me tell you something, it is delicious.
Thanks, everybody. Cheers.